Okay, gentlemen, I want to provide you this complement video, or this video to complement 2.4 day one, the other video where I manually create a scatter plot with you and show you how to do a line of best fit, interpolate, extrapolate, etc. This video is going to help you walk through your graphing display calculator and create the line of best fit and the scatter plot, etc. So first thing, remember when we're using our graphing display calculator, sometimes it's nice to just clear everything out. You'll recall that second function of the addition button and then 7, 1, 2. That gets rid of everything. Your stat plot is off and there is nothing in your stat plot. So if we go to, for example, let me hit clear here. If I go to stat menu and edit, there's nothing there. Okay. Now I want to take a look at my table of values, my initial height, and then my descent time. In this table of values, the x-axis, or my list 1, is going to be all the numbers I see there. So I'm going to start entering those slowly. So 2.0, enter, and just enter everything into my calculator. 2.7, 3.4. You can skip over this part if you like in the video. And I'll just enter that information. Remember, if you make a mistake, you can always type over. If you forgot you need to insert something, you can use the second function of the delete button. You'll see it right here, second function of the delete button, if you need that right there. Okay, and I'm going to clear that because I wasn't at error entry, so I need to delete that, and I need to delete that. That was just showing you something. Okay, now I want to go over to the second, 1.4, 1.9, 2.5, 2.7, 2.8, 2.2, 3, and 3.1. I need to just, because I'm typing so quickly, I need to take a quick look and double check that I entered everything correctly, which you should definitely do as well. And another thing is really important for you to look out for is, and I just realized I made a mistake here, I just look out for that your dimensions line up, the list 1 and list 2 line up. So I'm looking over here and I clearly made a mistake in column 1. That should say 4.0, not O, or 0. So 4.0, enter. And that's a 4 now, 4.5, 4.7, 5.0. Okay, good. Now, if I want to graph that, I can hit graph, and I don't see anything. The reason why, again, is because we are entering information as statistics, and we're going to try and create a line of best fit. The problem here is that we have our stat plot off. When we reset our calculator, the stat plot turned off. So we're going to go second function of the y equal button, and we're going to hit enter and turn that stat plot on by hitting enter on the word on. Now, if I hit graph, I can see everything's all jumbled up. It's really hard to see a trend line or a potential line of best fit. So what we want to do here is try the zoom button, zoom, and then option 9 is zoom stat, which zooms in on our statistics. And now it's zoomed in. To share some extra information with you, sometimes when we're trying to extrapolate, we need to change this window and adjust it. There is a window button up here that gives us the parameters of the current window now that we zoomed in. I will show you that if I hit zoom 6, which is zoom standard, that was our original window that we were looking at. Right? Zoom 6, if I click the window button, it tells me that my x minimum value is -10 on the x. So all the way left, it goes to -10. My x maximum value is +10. My y minimum value, if you look there, my y minimum value is -10, and the y maximum value is +10. That's what we call our standard window. But when I go to zoom and option 9, and then take a look at the window values, my x minimum went to 1.7. So if you look at our actual table of values in the Word document on the left, you see here that our lowest value was 2. And so what the calculator did is went just a little bit left of that to give us a buffer zone. And if our maximum value, you'll see is our maximum value on the x is 5, and it went 0.3 to the right to about 5.3. The x minimum is 1.4, or sorry, the y minimum is 1.4, and they went to 1.111. The max value is 3.1, they went to 3.389. So you see it just gave a little bit of a buffer. When you're extrapolating, though, sometimes you're going to have to adjust this window. If you try and find information about your graph that's beyond the data, it's difficult to find. Let's see if we can find an example like that later on. But for now, I just want to point that out. We're going to come back to that. So I'm going to hit the graph button. I hit zoom 9, and I'm zoomed in on my statistics. How do I find the equation for the line of best fit? Well, the first thing we do is hit stat, tab over to the word calc, and option 4 is a linear regression. I'm just going to go to the graph for a second. That does look like a linear relationship. It looks like the dots kind of go up in a positive slope left to right. So I'm going to use that. So I'm going to use linear regression. So stat, tab over to calc again, option 4. Oops, sorry. I apologize. Sorry, stat, tab over to calc. Option 4 is a linear regression. So we're as a straight line. So hit option 4. Remember, if you have the same screen that you see here, you are just going to tab down to the words store reg, or your equation, your linear regression, and leave it there for a second. For the guys who have the other calculator where you have a blank screen, you're hitting second function number 1, which will produce L1 on your screen, and then the comma button above the number 7. Then you'll hit second function of the number 2 button, and then the comma button again. So yours will now say L1 comma L2 comma. Again, what you're doing is you're telling the calculator, whatever I put in list 1 is my x values. Whatever I put in list 2 are actually my y values. And you're asking it to graph it accordingly. You're telling it what the coordinates are. Whereas this calculator assumes automatically list 1, list 2. You can have list 3, list 4, list 5, and etc. And then we can go in and manually, in our calculator, if we wanted to, we could actually go manually and change that to list 3, list 4, and play with different columns, enter a bunch of data and play with it. But in grade 9 and 10, we're generally dealing with list 1, list 2, just a couple sets of coordinates here. Okay, so everybody now at this point would hit the VARS button. So we'll hit the VARS button, and then we're going to tab over to the right to Y variables. And remember, if I hit enter on the word function, what I'm doing is, what we're trying to do is we're storing, once it creates that line of best fit, we're storing it here so that we can find out other information and use that line of best fit to interpolate, to extrapolate. But if you don't store it, it'll produce the line once, and as soon as you leave that screen on the calculator, it's gone. So we want to store it. So hit enter, we're going to store it right there. And again, if you have this calculator, tab down to the word calculate, okay? And then hit enter. If you have the other calculator, you're going to hit enter twice. And that should produce this linear regression equation, okay? And now if you hit the graph button, you'll see your line of best fit created there. If we want to write down our, line of best fit down, if I go to the Y equal button, I see here, wow, these are some serious decimal places. We could probably just round that to 2 decimal places and make life easy. And then you're going to have to tab all the way over to the right to get what the other value is. So you have 0.43939861010875826x. So I might just round that to 0.49x. And then the remainder is going to be plus 0.59. That's good enough. Taking a look here, sometimes you'll get in a question where it asks you to set your float. So I'll show you this. If you want to set your float to, for example, 2, that will round everything to 2 decimal places automatically for you. Okay, it makes life a little bit easier. And to do that, you'd go to your mode button, tab down to the word float, and then tab over twice, for example, and hit enter on the number 2. And that would set your float to 2. Let's see if it changes our line of best fit. I'm going to go to the Y equal button. I'm going to clear that equation out. Now you'll notice if I hit graph, my line doesn't show up. Why not? Because if I go to Y equal, my line is gone. I cleared it out. Let's try that all over again. So I'm going to go to stat, tab over to calc. Option 4 is linear regression. If you have the other calculator, you hit L1, second function number 1, so L1, and then comma, second function number 2, and then comma. And for the rest of us, we go here, the VARS button, tab over to Y variables, hit enter, enter, tab down, hit enter. The other calculator, you hit twice, enter twice, and look, there it is, rounded nice and clean. Now if I hit graph, there's my line of best fit, pretty darn close as the other one. And if I hit the Y equal button, I've got my equation there nice and cushy. It's like Y equals 0.49x plus 0.59. If the question asks you to set your float to 2 or 3, that's what you do. Okay, we don't do that automatically, only if the question asks you to do that. Otherwise, we'll leave the decimal places the way they are, so our line gets graphed very meticulously. Right, now, we know, I'm looking at the Word document here, the independent and dependent variable, we know the independent is initial height, and the dependent is the descent time. I want to take a look here, identify Any outliers? Well, if I look at my graph, I'll hit the graph button on my calculator. It does look like there's a little outlier there. And the other video, I point out that that is an outlier. So I'm not going to cover that again in too much detail. But it says, estimate the time it would take the skateboarder to reach the bottom of the ramp from a starting height of 3.6 meters. Well, the starting height is the initial height, or an X value of 3.6 meters. If I look at my table of values, there is no 3.6 there. There's a 3.4, a 3.8, but there's no specific 3.6. But that number 3.6 is between data points. So that's what we call interpolation, because it's within. To find that value, take a look at the trace button right next to the graph button, the trace button. Above it, it says calc. We want to use that function. So hit second function of that button, trace or calculating, and option 1 says value. So let me click option 1, and it says x equal. So what I'm using that for is to type in an x value, because again, the initial height is my x column, or my x-axis. So I'm going to write x equal, and we want to know what happens when x equal 3.6. Hit the enter button, and it'll spit out my answer, which is 2.35. So when x is 3.6, that's 2.35. We could do other values. For example, second function, calculate. Option 1 is a value. What happens when it's, let's pick one that's not there, 4.2. So I'll hit 4.2, enter, 2.65. We can keep doing interpolation. But another question on the Word document asks you to find out what happens when the initial height, starting height, is 6 meters. And here's what I was telling you before. So let's check this out. I'm going to blow that up for a sec. If we want to know what happens when it's at 6 meters, let's hit the second function, calculate. Option 1 is a value, and we type in 6, enter, and there we have an error message. The reason why you have that error message is because we have a window that is only looking up to 5.3. So let me just hit 1 to quit. And I'll go back to the window button that I showed you earlier. You see how our X maximum says 5.3, that the calculator gave us a buffer? We're going to have to make that larger, or at least 6. I'm going to say 7. Put it to 7. Okay. And by the way, if your calculator is graphing slowly, you can go down to this option right here where it says XRes, your resolution. It's not the best resolution as it is, let's be honest. But if you change it to something like 3, for example, and then you go to graph, check this out really quickly. The graph happens, okay? So that's just one thing if you're impatient like I am sometimes, you want that to graph quickly. But look at that, we changed it. Now we hit second function, calculate. Option 1 is a value. And if I type in 6 now that I've expanded my window to 7, I hit enter, it'll tell me the value is 3.53. Whereas earlier it wouldn't, because the calculator only tells us values that are within its window range. We would hope the calculator is intuitive enough to tell us, hey, you know where this line's going. It's going to infinity. So just tell me what the value is when x is 6, but it doesn't. As long as it's in the window, it'll give you that information. Anything outside that, we have to adjust our window range. All right, guys, I hope that helped you a lot, and we'll see you in class. Take care.